Thank you, Paloma.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully get you all some good information for you to share, not only with your students, but also from student to student that can learn a bit more about how you can leverage what you already know and how you already exist in the world to feel a sense of belonging and identity in STEM. I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Dr. Paloma Vargas. My pronouns are she, they, ella, and I am a trained microbiologist. I obtained my PhD at NYU and I studied molecular parasitology, which is a fancy way of saying I study things that will kill you in a very long-term way. As opposed to a virus or bacteria that like to kill you quickly. Parasites like to keep you alive and kill you slowly. But I've been in STEM fields for something like 25 years. And so very familiar with being Latinx, queer, non-binary person in STEM. And I hand it over to my friend and colleague, Adrienne Arguijo, to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Well, thank you so much for being here. So I'm Adrienne Arguijo. I actually work at Ventura College, which is actually part of the same college district that Dr. Vargas is part of. I have worked here at Ventura College for about a year. I serve as the HSI STEM grant director for our project Servingness, Aspiration, Identity, and Learning, otherwise known as Project SAIL in STEM. Really excited to be here with you all today and to share something that is very near and dear to my heart as well, which is really, as Dr. Vargas mentioned, really just talking about how you can really continue to develop and grow your innate wealth and contributions that you all are making in STEM, and how to be able to continue to do that well into your careers and your future positions as professionals in STEM.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about STEM identity and community cultural wealth. Now, I'll be honest and say that the first time I heard about community cultural wealth, I said, what is that? So we're going to hopefully walk you through what community cultural wealth is, and the information that we wanted to pass along is that you belong, why and how your culture matters in STEM. Often when we think about STEM disciplines, we think of, some of the things that I mentioned a little bit earlier ago, that we study specific things, or we look at very specific organisms or specific methods or specific experiments that we conduct in and out of the laboratory. In mathematics, it's problem solving. In biology, chemistry, and physics, it's being within that laboratory environment. In engineering, it's a little bit of both, right? So we tend to focus on the content. We tend to say, for you to be a good scientist, or what the idea of a scientist is this idea of being in the lab and not really taking into account or traditionally not taking into account who you are as a human being within the laboratory space. And what we're here to tell you is actually that it is very important for us and for you to know who you are and how you can leverage what you're doing and what you already have within you to be successful within this STEM discipline. So very short agenda today. Because we want to be interactive and we want to hear from you all, is we're going to define what STEM identity means. We're going to talk about community and cultural wealth. We're going to reference what is called the Científicos Latinexes, which is a study from Laura Rendon. And then Adrienne is going to help lead us all in identifying our own cultural wealth. And so let's get started. So STEM identity, some of you've probably heard of this before. This is a term that is now kind of going around quite a bit. I know when I started in STEM identity wasn't a thing. It was just like you're in STEM and that's all, you go in and you do some cool physics problems and you struggle with calculus and then you call it a day. But STEM identity is really this idea that you can see yourself as this type of student who engages in STEM. And can be recognized as a STEM student or a scientist. As you continue with your career, we often refer to students as, students in training, or they're STEM students, but really the reality is that you are already scientists, and you are sort of at the entry level of training as a scientist. You start looking at things in a scientific way from the time that you are able to communicate with others, whether that's verbal or nonverbal communication. If any of you have younger siblings or cousins, you'll notice that little ones will right away go outside and say, why? Why is this? Or why is that? Or start asking questions about, why is that flower yellow? Or why is this one green? That's part of scientific inquiry. And that's how you start building that STEM identity, where you see yourself as somebody that can study within the STEM disciplines and grow within those disciplines. Now, cultural community wealth, don't get scared by this super fun, really colorful graphic. What this means, this is actually something that was developed first by Oliver and Shapiro in '95. And all of us being STEM folks or affiliated with STEM folks, we know that we like citing papers as much as we like being in STEM spaces. So we're going to cite some papers, but don't get freaked out. We'll have references at the end, and if you really want to dig deep into them, we'll support you in helping you do that. But take a deep breath. It's just a scary graphic that we're going to walk through. So cultural community wealth, or community cultural wealth, is this idea that your wealth isn't just like an income, right? When we think about wealth, often people think about money. And that was certainly how I thought about things when I was starting in college, right? If somebody said wealth to me, I thought about, well, how much money am I going to make off of this stipend, or can I pay my tuition off of it? And Yosso really started thinking about Yosso. Tara Yosso is a professor that was at UCSB and now I think is at Riverside or Irvine. And she really started looking at what are the other areas beyond financial wealth that bring you important knowledge for you to be able to succeed in different spaces. And this was specifically in response to Latinx students and communities of color, right? When I think about the wealth that we have, it's really the total extent of your accumulated resources. And your accumulated resources can be anything from aspirational capital, that you aspire to be something, you aspire to be, for example, I have a friend who is an astrophysicist now, but her aspiration is and will continue to be an astronaut. She wants to be an astronaut. So that's her aspirational wealth there. Her familial capital, for me, I'm very privileged in having my family support me. And I also have a chosen family that supports me. And so that anytime I have some sort of issue that comes up, whether it be for school or for work or for anything else, I can go to them and say, hey, I need a little bit of support. Social capital is kind of what you're building here, right? Being here at this seminar or this webinar with all of these people that are here with you, they're helping you build that social capital. Now you know us, right? Maybe you don't know us in person, but you can reach out to Adrienne, you can reach out to myself, to Christine, to Sarah, to Gemma, Jesus, Randy, Andres, all of those folks, right? We're here to support you. Navigational capital is one that I think is really important, and one that often are students that are the first in their families, or the first in their families to go to college, or maybe even the first one in your family to be in a STEM discipline. To ask questions. If you're the first in your family to go to college, you had to understand or figure out how to do those applications for college, right? You had to go ask those questions. And that gave you what we call navigational capital. I'm going to move forward a little bit in the slides because we do have those in here, right? So you set those high aspirations for linguistic capital, which is one that I hadn't covered yet. It's the ability to communicate in 2 or more languages. For example, for many of my students here at Oxnard College, Spanish is their second language, or Tagalog. And with them, right, they're able to use that linguistic or that language capital to translate things that are actually really helpful for them. For example, in biology has a lot of Latin terms. So often what we think about with our students, or one of the ways that we help our students sort of understand a lot of these biology terms, is to say, well, how would you say it in whatever your preferred language is, or whatever language maybe is spoken with your family or at your home, and helping translate some of that. And then we also have ganas, or perseverance, right? We have resistance, we have resiliency, we're able to get through hard things together. And we also have that ability to persevere, ganas, that inner strength to keep going forward, to keep pushing, even when things are a little bit harder. This version of the cultural community wealth model is actually something that Laura Rendon, who's another great scholar, actually adapted and grew to specifically talk about científicos Latinexes, or Latinx scientists. And so if we look at the following slide, she and a group that she worked with looked at Latinx student success. So how do we get Latinx students to be successful? And the bottom line is that Latinx students are successful because they have it already within them to be these great scientists, right? So that's the bottom line of her research, is to say, our Latinx students in science, or Latinx or científicos Latinxes, already have all those wonderful things within them to help them be successful within the STEM fields. And we can talk about specific examples, but, you know, for example, having that financial support, whether it be through familial support, chosen family, financial aid, any one of those pieces is going to help Latinx student success. Validation, so doing what we're doing right now, right? Telling our students and telling ourselves and each other that we are already good scientists. If you have, I used to tell my students all the time, if you have a cell phone in your pocket, you are already a scientist, because you had to figure out how to use this very complicated piece of machinery, and you have to use data to determine, oh, hey, my battery's not working anymore. Those are observations. Or, hey, like my computer, my phone's working pretty slowly. Maybe I need to do something else for it. We also, Dr. Rendon also identified that student ventajas y conocimientos, or assets, which is what Yosso was talking about, is what helps Latinx students be successful in STEM. That cultural wealth model, where you have the ganas to persevere, the resiliency, the social capital, all of the linguistic capital, all of those different pieces that you already have within you are what's going to be helping you be successful. And that Latinx centered social academic activities and organizations are also pieces of that are going to help you. So what Adrienne is going to lead us in is helping you as students identify how you already have the majority of these, or how you could gain some of these to help you be successful within the STEM disciplines. They also found that students that participated in high impact practices in STEM research, for example, the C6 LSAMP, coming to these webinars, participating and having conversations with your local campus, talking with your peers about science, or just being excited about science, really, just in general, are all things that are going to help you be successful and be part of the scientific community. As somebody that went through school without knowing a lot of these things, as I look back on my own journey, I know that a lot of these things were the things that helped me be successful. I just didn't know how to do it. It just kind of happened. So we're going to help guide you in actually intentionally doing these things versus what happened to me, which is I just kind of fell into it and was thankfully successful. But I was also successful because I had support. I had, other funds of knowledge that helped me move forward. I had people telling me that I could do it. I had other people telling me that the social networks that I had were going to be helpful to me. And so we're going to give you a few examples, and then Adrienne's going to lead you into some activities. So Rincon and Rodriguez in 2021 actually did this really cool study where they looked at Latinx students charting their own STEM pathways and how they use community cultural wealth to help them create their STEM identity, right? That sense of belonging, that sense or idea that you're already a scientist. What they found was that students obtained community and cultural wealth from their families, peers, and their home communities to develop as those STEM individuals who wanted or aspired to give back to their community. They supported others in navigation in STEM, and they resisted oppression in support of social justice and bridged linguistic barriers between STEM and home communities. That's a lot to say. The following, right? So a good sort of translation of this scholarly idea is that students relied on or used their family, their peers, and their home communities because they wanted to give back, right? That aspiration, that like drive came from saying, I want to give back. I have a lot of my students that will say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a physician, I want to be a dentist, I want to go be a geologist because I want to help my community do better, or I want to help my community better understand these different scientific processes. So as students, right, and we saw this throughout the COVID pandemic, is that as students, you probably might have gone home or to your chosen family, whoever they may be, and they may have said, hey, you're a STEM major. Can you explain to me how this COVID pandemic thing is working? And instead of using the big fancy science words, you were able to explain it to the people you love in a way that actually made sense to them. That's linguistic capital. Another way was that aspirational, right? So that aspirational connecting with your community so that you can be a change agent for your hometown medical community, that familial, you kept people involved even throughout the pandemic. I had a student that would bring his little brother to class. We were on Zoom and he would bring little brother to class. I swear, I think that kid is probably now graduating college. He was like 8 when he was taking my 400 level course. So I'm pretty sure he's like ready to go. But he was in there, right? And that was sharing that experience. And then navigational capital, using those blogs and social media or other peer sources to navigate your STEM experience. Really great examples would be some of like Khan Academy or the Amoeba Sisters or any of those different sites where you can actually get more information about how to navigate science. That linguistic communication, like I said, it's not just that bilingualism of being able to see something in English and then translating it to Spanish or whatever language you're most familiar with, but also being able to, I think of linguistic capital also as being able to translate science. Science, I think for me, is a different language than English, than Spanish, than Tagalog. It's a way for you to be able to, you're able to communicate it from very high scientific terms to a way that your family can explain it or can understand it. I feel like that's linguistic capital as well. And then with resistance, right? Resistant capital, you might be disrupting assumptions or challenging dominant narratives or not dominant ideas. And then social, right? What do we do as STEM students and STEM professionals is that we hang out with other STEMmies. That's what I call all my faculty. I call them STEMmies, right? We hang out with the STEMmies because we want to hear more about STEM information. I went on a whole topic today and a whole conversation with a faculty member about viruses. Now, I don't know how many of you just hang out in the hallway talking about viruses, but that's what we did. We had a really good time. We didn't want to stop the conversation, but we both had meetings. But that was part of us building that social network and that social idea where we just talked, right? And then a student joined us. It was awesome. It was a lot of stemming and a lot of viruses, and people were looking at us a little funny because there was a sociology class right across the hall. But it gave us a place where we could share what we loved. And for us, it was sharing, about fun things that kill you. So I'm going to hand it over to Adrienne, who's going to lead us into really learning how we use this in regular life. I've mentioned a few things, but Adrienne is an expert in this, and so I'm going to hand it over to her so that she can guide us into some of these practices.
Thank you. Sorry, fun things that can kill you. It's gonna be one of my fun takeaways from this.
Yes,
So
fun things that can kill you.
So I'm just curious if Jesus and Rondé, and it looks like Andres has joined us as well. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with using Jamboard, but if you can let me know either in the chat or just in some other way, if you're familiar with this, we'll kind of get to skip over how Jamboards work. But I put the link to join the Jamboard in the chat, or you can QR code as well and hop on this Jamboard. And we're going to talk a little bit about really kind of taking a moment to pause and think about what this looks like, right, in our day-to-day. New to Jamboard. Okay, we'll spend some time talking about how it works in just a second. But I know that as students, sometimes we don't always take, or even as professionals, I'll say this, we don't always take the time to pause and think about all the contributions that we make in all the different aspects of our life, and really think about how we can continue to really be intentional about centering what we have to offer, right, in the different spaces that we're in. And so the intention, or the intentionality of the activity that we're going to walk through, is really to take what Dr. Vargas just shared with us about community cultural wealth and the 6 different types, and to think about what that looks like or how it might manifest in our lives. So whether you're joining through the bit.ly link or you're joining through the QR code, if you're unfamiliar with Jamboard, you'll notice on the left-hand side, there's a little toolbar that will actually allow you to contribute to answering and responding to some of these questions. And you can do that in a variety of ways. So the 4th little icon down is a sticky note. And if you click on that sticky note, you can actually choose any color that you like. And it works just like a physical sticky would. You can actually type text into that. And then if you click save, it'll actually post your response to the board. If you're not really into the sticky note thing, if you go down to the second to the last icon, you'll see a text box, and you can just type in text into that text box, and that's how you can include your response there. So one of the first questions that I'd really like for you to think about is, what are the different types of capital that you possess, right? We talked about 6 different ones. So we talked about aspirational, familial, navigational, resistant, linguistic, and social capital. So I want you to take a minute to think about, what are the types of capital that you possess. You might feel like you possess all 6 of them. Maybe you feel like your area of strength is in one area in particular. But of those 6, which of those 6, or how many of those 6 resonated with you? And then I want you to think about, in that same little way of communication that you use your preference, I want you to think about how you can use that capital to help you continue to be a successful student in STEM. So if you want to take, we're going to take a couple minutes. We're going to actually go through about 6 or 7 of these. So if you want to just take a minute and respond to those using your sticky notes or your text.
And just so you know, I think with the exception of myself and Adrienne, you are all anonymous, so you don't have to put your name on there if you don't want to. And you are, I always love these, an anonymous ferrets, an anonymous kiwi, an anonymous chipmunk, or an anonymous chinchilla. I haven't seen that one before. So feel free to share what you want and what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then we'll keep going. I'm going to put mine on here as well, Adrienne. Thank you for the prompts.
Yeah. And just if it's a little helpful to everyone, I'll also pop into the chat as well all of the different types of capital there, just so you can have a little refresher. And what you'll notice is as you post your sticky note, you might have to move it if it ends up sitting on top of or under someone else's response. You can actually click your sticky note. You can drag it across the board. You can make it larger or smaller if you'd like as well. I'll give us another minute on this question. I see a lot of familial or familia, right? And as Dr. Vargas mentioned, that can be represented of your, blood or biological family. It can be a chosen family. Familial capital can be represented in a lot of different ways. It could be part of a team or a group that you're part of, and that can represent your family or your familial capital as well. Social capital is also one that we see a lot with our students. We see that a lot within ourselves, right? One of the interesting findings in that article that Dr. Vargas shared with us was the idea that so many students lean on each other in terms of their social networks, right, to navigate their transfer experience as a STEM student. So there was some information that was really interesting in there about how students oftentimes would lean more on each other than they would with their campus support services to talk about the transfer experience. Nice. So see a lot of overlap there. Okay, so we can move on to the next board. So this board is how do you or can you invest in your relationships with other STEM students on campus using the various types of capital, right? So we just looked at and talked a little bit about what do you innately lean into in your experience, and now what experience or what types of wealth can you really look at or use within your network of relationships with other students on campus. And if you're on your own board, because I know we're looking at Dr. Vargas's screen, but if you're on your own board at the very top, there's arrows that will allow you to advance from one slide to the next. So you'll see at the top, there's like a 2 of 8. So if you click that left and right arrow, it'll advance you through the different slides. So that's how you'll get to the next one. Be dependable. I like that. Study groups. Absolutely. The other thing about social capital too is that oftentimes we associate social capital with other individuals or networks of people, but they can also be places and spaces. So if you think about spaces that you might spend your time in when you're on campus or maybe in your community, that can also be a representation of social capital as well. So if you haven't thought about it in that way, you can always maybe sit back and reflect on, like, what are the spaces that you feel that you get the most experience out of? Where do you feel like you belong? Where do you feel a sense of connection, right? And that could be a place or a space, and it doesn't always have to be on campus. Sometimes it can be out in the community as well. Borrowing each other's books. So yep, sharing resources. I'm sure sharing lab materials. Absolutely. We'll give another couple of minutes on this board. Hi, Christina. Welcome. I love that. Sharing of lab coats. Okay, let's hop into the next one. Oh, wait, I see one more. Work on class projects so we can interact with each other and get the project done. Yep. Sharing our story, resources, and supporting each other. Very cool. Oh, see stuff coming in. Love it. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So we're going to shift gears a little bit. So now what I want you to think a little bit about is how this, or what this would look like, right, in practice. So now we've identified the things that work for us, ways that we interact, ways in which this might manifest. And so now I want you to think about a little more deeply about each one of these areas. So the first one being familial capital, and thinking about how have the values that you've developed in the family that you are a part of. So how have your values, shaped your goals for yourself, your educational goals, your career goals, your personal goals, and who are the people that you look to help you kind of continue to manifest those goals or create those goals? And who do you call your family and community, right? Because we also talked about your family may not be the people that that you share space with at home, right? That might be someone outside of the home. So same thing, this board looks a little bit different, but you can still continue to use text box or sticky notes for this one. The mentors. See if we have any other interests, any other sharing of people you might look into. And again, this can be represented through a lot of different types of individuals. So this could be faculty. This could be, again, if you're involved in any other groups, if you're involved in student groups, or if you're involved in athletics in some way. This can actually look like a lot of different types of individuals. Nice. We'll take a couple more minutes with this one. Welcome. I see Sheila and Marcella. All right, let's go to the next one. So this one is, who are some of the people in your community that can speak authentically about your qualities, skills, and experiences, right? So these are individuals who you may know, these are folks who you may have known when you were, in elementary school that you still maintain in contact with. These could be people that you work with if you hold a job somewhere, right? So who are some of the people in your community that can really speak about your qualities, your skills, and experience? These might be part of those relationships, right, that you want to continue to foster when you're starting to think about pursuing internship or research opportunities, or you're starting to think about transferring. If you're needing a letter of recommendation for something, maybe you're looking for a job somewhere, right? And these are individuals that you can tap into that will really help you with this. And we also talked about that not necessarily being individuals. These could be places or spaces. And if you're a member of any student organizations, they STEM related or not, but would be nice to know what student orgs you might be a part of, or community organizations as well. And this Jamboard is going to be, I think we'll be able to get this presentation emailed out so that you all will continue to have access to this Jamboard. So you can always go back and reflect. Sometimes it's nice to look and see what other folks are experiencing or thinking, or what resources they've leveraged or tapped into that might be kind of helpful if you're thinking about different ways that you might want to pursue the development of your capital in some of these areas. Faculty seems to be a big one. A lot of professors. This is great. Good to hear that you have these really great relationships with your faculty.
Almost nothing makes a faculty member happier than hearing that their students want to talk to them or hear from them. And nothing makes a dean happier than knowing that students can talk to their faculty. So this is good. All right, I love it.
This is really exciting. And especially when you're thinking about needing letters of recommendation, I think that's really, really helpful, right? To feel like you have developed a relationship with someone that you are in contact with regularly, and especially if that's a faculty member or professor that can help you with that, obtaining that letter, right? Or oftentimes I get asked a lot for letters of recommendations for scholarships or internships or research experience programs. So great resource. Okay, let's do the next one. Okay, so this is the big question. What keeps you going? Maybe it's Starbucks, maybe it's something else. But what keeps you going? And when you think about your future self, who do you see? And if it's Starbucks that keeps you going, I'd like to know about it. I like that. Strong presence of mom, sister, and girlfriend. That's awesome. Family. A lot of family. The familia aspect of it. I'm curious, when you think about your future self, who do you see? Who's her family? Okay, we've got a few more. So we can go to the next one. So now we've got linguistic capital. So what are some of the sayings or wisdom that has been passed down to you, right? So those consejos that you might have received along the way. Maybe something from a professor or a mentor, someone that's told you something about the STEM experience. And what are different audiences that you feel that you've connected with? So maybe that's through language, maybe that's through some other type of communication. And how do you share your story? Yoda. Mhm. And the linguistic capital is also really important because it also talks about the significance of storytelling, right? And the rich history of storytelling and oral histories and the value in ability to communicate in different ways, right? We'll do another minute on this one. Oh, I like that one. Échale ganas. He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. Oh, wow. I think these are all t-shirt worthy. Maybe get it on a mug. Okay, let's do the next one. So navigational capital, in what ways have you practiced resiliency in spaces where you felt like you did not belong or you were different? And what communities or systems can support you through navigating these experiences? And these last two, navigational and resistant capital, are really centered around empowerment, right? And how we navigate spaces that may feel unsupportive, or where you may feel like you don't have a sense of belonging. And these two are really important in terms of the resiliency and, continuing to persist within STEM. And so how do you do that? And who do you, or what do you lean into to help navigate those experiences if and when they happen? That you could relate to. Yeah, maybe think about different spaces that you've been in, and where are the spaces that you feel like you do belong, or spaces that you feel seen or heard, and think about what that might look like. We'll do another minute on this one, and then we'll do the last one, and then we'll wrap up. And the finding someone that you can relate to, I think, depending on what campus you're at, especially with our C6 Alliance, right, having the support of tutors or peer mentors in certain spaces, right? Those leaning onto your peers can oftentimes be a really great way to help you navigate a place or a space that you're unsure of. Observe and see. Okay, let's do the last one. Showing up to those spaces. Ooh, I love that. Absolutely. Show up anyways, right? And that'll lead us into our last one, which is our resistant capital. So what are some ways that you have decided to define yourself or your future differently than what others have expected of you? And how have you used your voice to advocate for yourself? And using your voice can look really different to different people. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you are speaking up, but how are you communicating in some other way that what you need and what you deserve, you're not getting? Like that. Don't stand for it if it isn't right. That's a t-shirt right there. Yep. Going back to where you were told no, do it anyways. We'll take a couple more minutes with this one. Well, I know that we are going to be sharing this out, so please know that you'll be able to come back and reflect on this, or even if you maybe at a later time want to do your own reflection on your own time. The Jamboard will continue to be open, so you can continue to engage with it. You can share it as well with someone else. So you can also do that if you want to do this activity with someone else, or if you're part of a student org or group and you think an activity like this would be really great with them, please feel free to do it with them. So thank you. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Vargas.
Of course, it's always like that time when you're trying to find the mute button, that the mute button disappears. Just thank you to all of you. I'm going to pop the slide up here with the references if you really are excited about that kind of stuff. I know Adrienne and I, more Adrienne than me, we're literature, scholarly work nerds, and so we read articles for fun. Like I said, more Adrienne than me. But if you're really excited about reading some of these articles or learning more on your own, the articles are listed here. I'll make sure I'll add the actual link to find this, the Rendon paper. But just thank you again for inviting us and allowing us to share some of this work with you all. We are all, I think Adrienne and I are big supporters of really telling you all as students and as colleagues why this work is important and how to really just work within yourself and do some self-reflection to understand that you already have that knowledge within you. And I really wish somebody would have told me all this stuff when I was in college. So hopefully it helps you, and it helps you identify ways that you're already doing all the great work and have that perseverance within you. And that you can share that with your friends too, and your colleagues and peers, so that they know how to identify this within themselves on their own. And I'm going to turn it back to Christine to close us out or share any other information.
Thank you both. That was amazing. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate your time and effort and the support that you're giving to the C6 students. Any last questions or things or comments that students want to say, or put it in the chat? The recording will be available on the LSAMP website, which is located off of the Allen Hancock College website. I'll put it in the chat. So if you want to share it with your friends or your family or whoever you feel would want to see it, it is available online to watch and engage with. So, okay, I think we're done unless there's any other final comments or questions. All right. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great rest of your Thursday night, and as we truffle into the weekend. Bye.